All right, let's put this thing together. I'm excited, I'm happy, I think it's gonna look pretty cool. I've done a few things to this board. I lowered the analog sticks. The adhesive strips were very strong, but they just took away too much space for us. We needed to lower those down. I epoxied them right to the board. I sharpied some areas like the front of L1 and R1. This switch, the top of the switch. I added button caps to start and select. And then I glued on the caps to everything. The dongles have a piercing bright blue LED lights on those. And I wanted to keep those because it's kind of cool to see the activity, what's going on with them when you're using them. So I used a dab of hot glue on each one, and a little bit of Sharpie on the top of that hot glue, and that reduced the brightness to an acceptable level. I Sharpied around the perimeter of the speaker here on the adhesive backing. So if I still want to use that, the strip underneath, I can still just pull this up and use it. And that'd be nice, but it looks pretty cool like this. So I think that is it for that. For the shell, I've added some decals, and I've milled out some areas here on the bottom of where the analog stick is. So that's set down into the case just a little bit more. And the decals are set down into the case a little bit too. So that gives some more room for the analog stick cap to move freely. I've sanded the space between these. So I've thinned up both the top and the bottom parts of this, but I still needed a little bit of extra help to thin the case right there. You know, when working on the clear shell, I knew it was going to be kind of some extra effort. I had to be more careful with this. And the procedure that I found myself using a lot was I would use a curved craft blade to scrape off any issues, and that itself leaves some issues. So to get rid of those marks, I would use some very fine sandpaper. Then I would come back with a polishing bit with some polishing compound. These are in all kinds of Dremel bit kits. But this actually was kind of dangerous because it's caused a lot of heat to build up, and that would even ruin the case even worse. So what I would do a lot of times is I would use polishing compound on a Q-tip. And I just get it wet, put some polishing compound on there, and go over the already smoothed out areas. And I think that's the best I can come up with for now. And this light pipe, I Sharpied all around except for the top and the bottom, so the light can shine straight through. And also, I put a little bit of tape in the base around where the LEDs are on the board to try to help block that light a little bit extra too. The screen had a little bit of light leaking around this side here, so I used some electrical tape to just kind of cover that up. That's all going to be hidden under the bezels anyway. And these little discs are from a PSP 1000 analog sliders. I don't have any for the 3DS sliders, so I'm going to use these. It should help keep a little bit of dust and debris out of it. A lot of times the slider switch for the power, it sits too low in the shell. It just depends on the shell. So I'm going to use a strip of paper. This one is sandpaper because I like the texture, and that'll help it to sit in the right position. You know how whenever you buy screens, it comes with the adhesive backing on here? I had planned on just using the extra, like the center cutout piece here, because it's the same stuff, and just cutting into strips. But I found this. I don't know where I got this. It just happened to show up in my stuff. So I'm gonna use this and I'm just gonna trim it up a little bit, and that'll work. For the glass, I planned on using the Freeplay glass and just scratching away the color on the inside. And it was going really well, but then I messed it up. I slipped and it started to look pretty ugly, and decided just to scrape it all off and just paint on black bezels. So I put the blank glass screen on, covered it with tape, and I marked the bezel areas, turned it over, covered it with tape, and then I cut out the bezel areas, removed the tape, and spray painted it. You just saw me put this together. That was like a week ago for me. And this video used to have the software set up for the controller, but I think it makes more sense if I just do one video for all of the software in one shot and put that on the end of the playlist, so I'm gonna do that. Instead, let's look at a week later with this. I've done a couple things now. The analog sticks, I put them up as high as I could on purpose because it's more comfortable, but the analog stick could touch the X button very slightly. So just now, I kind of scraped away part of the button. And next time I take this apart, I'll just sand it and kind of make it look a little bit nicer. But it doesn't look too bad as it is like that. So speaking of those buttons, I think I forgot to show how I did that. In my example build video, I did the same thing as I did here. So I used sandpaper, like 120 grit. It just went coarse to fine, 120 grit down to like 1200 or something like that. Then when the face lettering was gone, I just buffed it to bring the shine back out. And these analog sticks, it took some work to do to get these in here. So the shell itself, I had to thin that up on both sides because the analog stick kind of is like a double cap. So for the shell, I put tape on there and I filled in all of like the speaker grill area and stuff like that with the clear epoxy. And then I just drilled the new holes for the cap to go through. But the cap itself, oh, and also I had to, I did the milling on here. So I milled it on the top and the bottom to thin it. And the cap itself, I widened up the space in the center here. So I just took, you can use any piece of plastic that's pretty thin and firm, sandpaper, and then I just sanded away to widen up that opening. I had to do both of those. It's essential to get this to feel right. If your analog stick has friction on it, it's gonna ruin everything. Also, I wasn't too happy with the feel of the analog cap itself. It was kind of slippery, and I didn't like how, it's concave. It looks nice, and some people probably like it, but I don't. So to fix that, decided to try this. And I know this looks, to me, I first saw this, I was like, this is sort of like the spray paint your bald spot to make hair kind of infomercial looking thing. But I wanted to try it anyway, and I'm glad that I did because it feels way better. This is 3 coats on each one, and it just feels nice. Slightly grippy, the right amount of grippy, and it changes the whole feel for this. This is sort of like necessary for me now. That's how good it is. I'm probably gonna do the same thing with my Vita Sticks build, because I used the cheap Vita Sticks on here, and it's just plastic, not too grippy. Coating those too. So maybe I've been laughing at like the hair spray paint stuff too much. Maybe that stuff's great. Maybe it works. I don't know. So that should be it for this, other than that software. And if you don't need to watch that right now, just skip over it. skip over it whenever until you actually need to watch it, because it's probably going to be boring unless I can figure out some way to make it more interesting, like I could tell some cool jokes or something. So I don't know if you know any cool jokes, let me know.